All right, so I'm back live. I had a delivery. I thought it was coming in 3 hours, but it came right in the live stream because that's how it goes. Anyway, so I'm back answering questions. Any questions you guys have? If you were in the last live stream, just go ahead and pick up from where we left off, hopefully. Yeah, here to answer your questions. Thank you for bearing with me if you were with that live stream. If you weren't, I do all sorts of things with software, and that's really what it's all about, right? Just doing stuff with software. So welcome back if you weren't here before. Hey, what's up? Hey, thanks for coming back. Appreciate it. I think I missed a bunch of questions. Like I said, the delivery thing that just came out really, really early, which I'm happy about in the sense that I'm happy it's here, but it interrupted the live stream. So yeah, but I'm here to answer you guys' questions about anything related to software, starting up a business, whatever. I have a lot of thoughts on all sorts of things, so we can certainly talk for hours. I don't think I'll be on here for hours, at least maybe an hour. But yeah. So, hey, what's up? How's it going? Thank you. Yeah, I got a lot of new classes on CFE, both on my website as well as right here on YouTube. And I got Try Django 3.2 coming out hopefully by the end of this month, maybe early August, but hopefully this month. That's been one that I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm really excited about that. So hopefully you guys check that out when it does drop. Hey, what's up? Hey there. You really want to have skills like me? Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think a big part of it is really just spending the time necessary to build projects that you want to build. That's how I learned my skills. It wasn't like I did a formal thing necessarily. I still watch tutorials every once in a while of like, hey, I want to learn about X, Y, or Z. So I'll watch a little something to fill in gaps that I just don't find that quickly in the documentation. The other cool thing about actually going through a course, from me or from many other people, is they usually try to lay it out in a way that it just like guides you through making things happen. So it just takes some time and dedication. That's really it. You got an internship at a startup that uses Django REST framework, but you're unable to grasp serializers and view sets. Sure. Do you know Django Forms well? If you do, it's very similar to Django Forms, but all the serializer is doing is it's going to validate and ensure that the data that's coming through is correct, like it's the data you actually want. But then it's also going to be able to save and store that data. It's very, very similar to Forms. So that's the ingesting of the data. And then you can also turn data into a JSON format. So it's just a more clean format for APIs to communicate with each other. View sets are just like shortcuts to rendering out CRUD views. So create, update, retrieve, and delete. That's really all it is. Hopefully that helps. Thoughts on GitHub Copilot? Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've used Kite before, so I think it's very similar to Kite in the sense that it's going to help you with autocomplete and just really help you as a developer writing stuff. I don't think there's much concern for like replacing the developer. I think if anything, it's going to help enhance the speed as to which a developer might be able to work potentially. I haven't used it enough to really give a full breakdown on that thing. I mean, let me know if you guys want to see my thoughts in like a video breakdown of GitHub Copilot. It's definitely interesting, and I'm really looking forward to more and more services that come out like this, where you can start writing code and it's going to start interpreting what you're trying to do, what your intention is, and just fill in the gaps for you. But of course, you kind of need to know what you're trying to do, I think, before that really happens. But it might be a really good learning tool as well. So we'll see. Hey, Ranjan, what's up? I'm doing well. How are you? Do a video with Django and WebRTC, please. Thank you for the suggestion. How do you learn Django quickly? I think you would want to learn Django by building projects, because you can learn a lot about Django in a short amount of time, but there's so much to Django. I'm still learning things all the time anyway. So I would say build a project. That's probably the fastest way to learn Django itself. Like build a full-on web application using Django, ideally following along a tutorial so you don't actually make mistakes necessarily, but hopefully the teacher is actually doing it correctly. We'll see. Do you need software engineering skills for data scientists or for data science? Yes and no. I mean, some of it you absolutely need to have some skills in terms of like writing code. Now, do you need to be able to deploy a full-on web application or a full stack application? Probably not. But you'll probably need to know Python or JavaScript so you can do ETL, extract, transform, load, so you can communicate with some APIs. But yeah, I would say at least like my 30 days of Python series, I think that would probably give you enough of a foundation of Python to do a lot of things in data science. Hopefully that helps. I mean, there's a lot to doing data science that's partially like interpreting what you need to do with math and the statistics, where that doesn't always mean that you have to know exactly what to do with all of the software engineering stuff, right? Hey, I'm not Dennis. Dennis was here. I don't know. Maybe he's still here. Dennis has there's a lot of free courses on YouTube that you can get a lot from. So if you're not, this is me just speaking for Dennis. He might hook you up. I don't know. But the thing is, like, if you want to learn something that is going to be of value to you, why not pay for it sometimes? You know what I mean? Because there's already a lot of free content to learn a lot of this stuff, That's just my thoughts. I don't know. Anyways, how much JavaScript should one learn before jumping to React or other JavaScript frameworks? I joined as a software engineer. I feel like I don't know many things. Feels like I quit the job. So first of all, if you are uncomfortable in your job, that's probably a good thing, right? Because that means that you have a lot to learn. And honestly, like even like sort of easy jobs, like a restaurant waiter, like if you threw me in at a restaurant that had like a big menu right now, I think I would do okay because I've worked in restaurants before, but I would feel like I don't know anything, because you don't. Like when you're starting out with something, you don't know anything. So the idea here is just take it step by step. And I would say work really hard, listen to the other software engineers that you're working with, talk to them, get their advice. But show that your managers that you're willing to go that extra effort to make things happen. JavaScript, I don't think is that hard to learn, but I've been doing this for a little while. And I think JavaScript's got a lot easier to learn as well. So you can actually get a lot of really good stuff from your coworkers that won't require you to quit the job, but rather like just do better along with them. Hopefully that helps. I don't know. Last pair, did you see the Python being used for front end? Yes, I have seen Python being used for front end. It's usually interpreted to JavaScript, so it's not really Python, or compiled to JavaScript, which is fine. But I don't personally think that for front end websites that's great. For actual applications, again, I like HTML and CSS, so I typically end up using like mobile applications or desktop applications. I typically like to use the web for rendering those things out. Python can do it, absolutely. Kiwi is one of them that does it pretty well, as far as I've heard. But I actually haven't seen very many Python front end or Python GUIs that do amazing. Like I haven't seen a great example from anybody that's like, hey, this was a Python GUI, check it out. You know what I mean? Is Django really good with building machine learning based applications? Well, it depends on what you mean by this. Django would be more of the data pipeline for an algorithm, as well as hosting the algorithm too, or like serving the algorithm or the model, the machine learning model you create. So Django itself cannot make machine learning models at all. That's not what it's made for. Django is a web application framework. Something like Keras or scikit-learn, those are for machine learning models and building actual machine learning models, where Django would really just host the thing, as in you could use Django with the machine learning model together to make predictions. That's kind of what I mean by that. But that's true with any sort of Python-based machine learning model. Django could run it. It doesn't have to run on Django, but it certainly can. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, so Django's SQL ORM is one of the best. Absolutely. So like hands down, I agree with you. Any take for suggestions for Node.js SQL ORM? I think the Adonis framework is trying to do what Django did for Python. Adonis is trying to do it for JavaScript or server-side JavaScript. So I would check that one out. They have a lot of really good people working on that, and it's something that I would spend more time with if I wasn't already like obsessed with Django and Python web applications. Do this more often? Yeah, absolutely. I definitely need to. It's been a minute since I've done it, and of course the other one was cut short. So yeah, to start with, front end or back end. Now the thing is, front end is incredibly trendy, right? In the sense that trends happen all the time with the front end because that's what non-technical people end up using the most, or at least seeing the most and feeling and getting used to the most. So when you're starting out, you're going to hear, oh, you should do JavaScript, React, or Vue. And it's like, because it's all these cool animations or like functionality that it just like feels really, really cool. But the back end is something that's a bit more stable. It's not going to have these amazing changes or these huge changes that I can think of, at least, where you can learn the back end with, I would say, minimal effort that's going to last quite a bit longer. Because really with the back end, if you can learn how to actually build a REST API, then your front end can be pretty much anything. It can be a TV application, it can be a mobile application, it can be a desktop application, it can be a web application, it could be a IoT device or an edge device, it could be a CNC machine. I mean, the sky's the limit on what can consume something from a backend. So I think the backend is a critical piece to know. So I tend to say, hey, go for the backend. Luckily with Django, it actually mixes both. So Django has a templating engine, which is the front end. So Django does the front end and back end really, really well, in my opinion, just out of the box, right? So there's not a whole lot you need to know other than Python, HTML, and CSS. You don't even really need JavaScript to make a really great Django application. There's a lot of things that exist without JavaScript that are great. Look at Craigslist. It probably uses JavaScript now, but just a little bit. And it's still one of the most popular websites in the world, which is something to think about. We are about to start an app that is built around building communities. I wonder if I can use Django on the back end. But I'm worried that my front end will be weak as opposed to something like React. Okay, so I have a whole tutorial on integrating Django with React, and I intend to have many more in the future. Django is the backend for Instagram. It's not the only backend technology, but it is the backend. And that's true for Pinterest as well, or at least this has been true for a really long time. So if it changed, I'd be curious to know why. But again, they use other services too. So they use Node.js and all sorts of other backend services too. But the core of it is Django. So certainly you can use Django to build communities. Absolutely. But the front end, so I just kind of got done saying this, but the front end will evolve over time, right? So when I first started, I just did a full-on Django application with a jQuery front end to model things. So if you don't know what jQuery is, it's just a JavaScript library that made it easier to write JavaScript, right? As opposed to something like React or Vue, they're just kind of different paradigms of building front-end interfaces. You're still writing JavaScript, you're just not necessarily trying to manipulate the same way as jQuery. So the point is that it evolves over time. And I almost guarantee you that if React doesn't change majorly, it probably will have something else that comes in a short amount of time that will change it. The other thing that's really cool is a tool called HTMX, with an X, right? Check out that. That will mean that you can use Django with these asynchronous tools, and it's really, really cool. Try Django 3.2, the one that I'm coming out with next, my next big one for YouTube. That one will absolutely have HTMX in it because I'm not going to be covering React at all or any sort of JavaScript. There might be a little bit, but most likely there's going to be very, very little. So hopefully that answers your questions. Cool. Bangladesh. Nice. Thank you. Make some tutorials on REST API. It sounds like a lot of you guys want REST API stuff. Is that right? Django, Flask, Fast API, all that stuff. Let me know. Okay, so which do I prefer for deploying Django applications? Self-managed EC2 instance versus Elastic Beanstalk. Yeah, so the thing is, I think I'm leaning towards preferring using an EC2 instance and doing something like Terraform, which is a way to manage a bunch of different services inside of AWS or Google Cloud or Linode or DigitalOcean, or, the list goes on. So Terraform can actually provision these servers, virtual machines like EC2, across all of these different services the way you need. And you can use Terraform or something like Ansible to actually handle a lot of the other deployment parts of it. That being said, I just mentioned all sorts of things that add some complexity that make it harder for you to deploy just a single Django application. So in that case, Elastic Beanstalk is a good choice if you're on AWS. There is Fargate. That's another good choice. That's actually probably what I would do, is the actual Docker container managed service. There's another one, App Engine on Google Cloud. That one's really good. Also Google Cloud Run. Those are like kind of similar to what Elastic Beanstalk is and AWS Fargate. DigitalOcean has App Platform. That one's really good too. There was some hiccups there for a little bit with Django. Those are gone, as you'll see in Try Django 3.2. I'm going to be deploying on DigitalOcean there. And then Heroku is also really fast. I think the guys over at Just Django use render.com. I believe that's what they use. So there's a lot of options for deploying just the Django application. It's probably not what you wanted to know. Which one do I prefer? I think if you're going to really want to learn how to deploy an application, EC2 instances are the way to go. And you can check out my Hello Linux series or even the Pi server series on my website that will show you how to deploy everything that you need for a Linux server of any kind. It doesn't have to be on AWS. It could just be a Raspberry Pi, which I think is probably one of the best ways to learn virtual machines, is just to buy one of these things and learn how to deploy on that. Is Django becoming obsolete? I don't believe so. I think we're a long way away before we see something like Django being obsolete. Maybe the templating engine part of it, or the front end rendering part of it, maybe that's going to evolve. I kind of feel like that's like the only real big piece that might evolve a lot in the near future, but I haven't heard really big changes in that way. Alexander from the Netherlands. Nice. Amsterdam. Man, Amsterdam is probably one of my favorite cities in Europe. There's like one part of it, everyone knows the part, that I like probably wouldn't take my kids to ever, right? Which unfortunately is there, but everything else about Amsterdam is like this amazing cultural place. It's in the canals. It's like such a beautiful city. Anyways, can I learn Java and JavaScript simultaneously because I want to become a full stack developer? So Java and JavaScript aren't the only thing that they relate is the fact that Java is in their name. So they're not similar at all. So I would say separate those two, learn one at a time. So if you're already started Java, just stick with Java for a while, learn a lot of the fundamentals of programming, and then move into JavaScript, because JavaScript's most likely going to be easier for you than Java. At least that was my experience when I was picking between the two. But it's a common mistake that people make, Java and JavaScript being very, very similar. If you use React on the front end, I cannot use Django's bells and whistles. Yes, you absolutely can use Django, 100%. So the only thing that's going to be really changing is how your front end interacts with your back end. So React can actually call APIs or Django endpoints, views, really, that Django does really, really well. So React can absolutely communicate with that. So yeah. And the paid course is also to support the free work. Absolutely. So going back to my earlier comment related to buying any courses, if you enjoy their free stuff, the paid stuff certainly allows me to do stuff like this, right? Like if I had to just make paid courses, or work for a normal job, like I wouldn't be able to do free Q&A things like this, so totally agree with that. But that's true for any content creator out there. And someone like Dennis works really, really hard. I know this because I've seen him. He was in some of my classes years ago, and I've seen him how active he is with other things. This is true for many, many content creators. So yeah, I think supporting them, and even in a small way, is certainly something we should do more of, because maybe at some point you become a content creator, because it's amazing. You learn so much more about what you're trying to learn when you teach it, right? It's like the best way to learn. And doing it so publicly is another way to learn, because, well, if you make a mistake, people let you know, right? So like if I say, let's say, for instance, I said Vue.js instead of React.js, but I was actually using React, somebody's going to call me out on it. That's a simple example, but you sort of get the idea, I think. So you're learning Django and Python following my series. I see there's a rare Django developer opportunities, and most organizations want experienced people. Yeah, so the key thing here is you need to build up a portfolio, right? So if you don't have a portfolio of applications you've done, and if they're on GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, you want to put them out there. Once you have a portfolio, you can absolutely freelance on stuff like Upwork or any of the other freelancers sites. So freelancing means that, hey, you've got this portfolio, and then you're going to offer work to people that are looking to hire specifically Django developers or Python developers, right? The other thing is, if there's a company that has a web application that you're like, hey, this is just not working that great. If you know Django well enough, you can actually make a web application real fast, send it to them, send it to their CEO, send it to their chief marketing person, whatever, and show them, hey, this is something I suggest you do with your website. They might hire you right then and there. And that's another way to build your portfolio, but also get you experience trying to sell yourself as a potential candidate to work at a place. So to think that all you need to learn is like Django or React or whatever, that's not true. I don't think at all. Especially like on an interview, if somebody's looking to hire you, you're going to have to tell them why they need to hire you, right? It's not always just your skill. Some companies might hire you just because you're great at X, Y, or Z. But if you can't communicate, if you can't talk to anybody, then you're going to be not getting jobs at all. So doing freelancing helps you with that communication. It also helps you understand like what kind of company you want to work with. Do you want someone who's checking in with you every 5 minutes? Literally, this does happen. Checking in with you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, see how things are going. You can't get any work done. So freelancing is a good way to sort of see what kind of manager you want to work with. But it also might be a great way to make a lot of money in a short amount of time. So you want me to make a real project from scratch? Try Django 3.2. That's what's coming, man. That's going to be a real project from scratch. It's going to be a big one. I have no idea how long it's going to be, but it's definitely going to be a big one. Certainly bigger than Try Django 3.2. So it's definitely going to be over 4 hours, most likely closing in on 10 hours, maybe even longer than that. Really depends. Yes, I think, well, actually, Java versus JavaScript, I wouldn't say it's car versus carpet. It sounds very similar. I would actually say it's maybe car versus like, I don't know, plane. Nah, because that's speed thing. But like mode of transportations, because they're still programming languages, right? And they can still do a lot of the same things. Not everything, but I do like the attempt at analogy. Sorry to pick it apart if you were like super proud of it, because I think JavaScript, carpet, I think that's good. That was probably the best part of it, you know? Okay, so why Django has a problem when logging into custom admin, the user side also logged in and also logged out. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Probably something with your sessions. Whew. 1 second. Who watches The Mandalorian? My family knows I do. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. Rephrase it and I'll try and get to you. And guys, like I'm like already so far behind on questions. I think, let's see, I'm like 20 minutes behind on questions. So if you do that super chat thing, I probably will see those questions faster. And I'll probably scroll through a few in a little bit. have you gone for any new Django project dependency tools like Poetry? So Poetry is like a Python virtual environment manager. Now, the thing is, the reason I still use VENV, or actually went back to using VENV, is because it works well on pretty much every operating system. Stuff like Poetry, or pipenv, a lot of the things of these like better management tools don't work for everybody and don't work all the time and don't work on everything like out of the box, like a Raspberry Pi, where built-in virtual environments do. But certainly if you're like more of a professional developer and you're not learning from tutorials all the time, stuff like Poetry or pip env are great tools. Django REST framework versus DJ GraphQL. I think those are the ones that you're asking me, or Django GraphQL. Django REST framework is, I think, a little bit easier to learn because it's just like, hey, here's the URL endpoint. This is what you call. GraphQL also takes into consideration that your client or your front end actually know how to write GraphQL queries as well, where an actual API endpoint or REST API endpoint is a lot easier to do. So they both have a lot of great features to them. I tend to lean towards Django REST framework because of the ease of implementation overall. Now, of course, if you know GraphQL, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? GraphQL is way easier to implement than Django REST framework. Yeah, but you also have to know a new querying methodology than just a simple endpoint call, So it's hard to say which one's best. I think they're both great. Yes, I intend to do more like this. What does Django REST offer comparing to fastapi and Flask? Yes, Django has all batteries included. So if you want a database schema, if you want to actually connect Django to a database, it does that out of the gates. You actually sort of have to do that to make Django run. Fastapi and Flask don't do that out of the gates. So that means that you have to find a third-party package to use with fastapi and Flask. Now, SQL Alchemy is a great package, and you could totally use it, and it would totally work well, and that's great for fastapi and Flask, but it's another abstraction that you have to add. Django REST framework also has built-in authentication because Django has built-in authentication. fastapi and Flask do not. So those are a couple things that make it different. But honestly, like if you're serving a machine learning model, fastapi and Flask are great for it because you can just spin it up real fast and you're done. Yes, you can spin up Django real fast and you're done too. But that's kind of the thing. And actually, if I remember correctly, Adam Johnson did a post on a single page Django application. I did a video on it too, but his is, I think he's done several posts on it. It's worth checking out because then it's almost like Django, fastapi, and Flask are like the same then, which is kind of weird. What's the best way to learn JavaScript and React? I think the best way to learn any programming is to build a real project. Of course, I have a bunch of projects with React, and obviously you'll learn some JavaScript using React. So I think just diving in, trying to build a project, something simple to getting more and more advanced, even like a to-do list, right? It's just a simple to-do list thing that can be enough, or even just a web page that just renders a video, like a YouTube video, Okay, so how can I integrate machine learning models and graphs using Django and React? Should I use Node.js instead of Django? Good question. Okay, so Django machine learning models turn into a binary that you can run, right? So to actually do inference, that can be hosted on Node, Django. You can be hosted on a lot of different things, right? So Django itself, you would want to load it inside of a Django application when that's running. Now, unfortunately, memory is a concern when it comes to stuff like this. So for me, I usually abstract it away and make it a microservice, like its own service inside of my suite of services, essentially, where it's not actually in my primary application at all. It's not in my primary web application. It's a secondary, smaller web application, whether it's Node.js or Django. That's to serve the machine learning model, right? So as far as graphs, as in like charts and graphs and all that you'd want for statistics, Django and Node.js both can do this well. I think they're both great at it. The speed as to which they render and run is one thing. You also might want to cache the actual queries that are doing for the graphs. But essentially what you'll end up doing is creating, the graphs also depend on whether it's streaming or not. but you'll probably use some sort of JavaScript library like Chart.js and Django, or Chart.js and Node.js. I believe Chart.js does have React bindings as well. Hopefully that answers your question. How do you develop a video streaming website using Django? Yeah, so you're going to need more than just Django. You'll probably use FFmpeg, or I think Apache has another one to actually stream the video itself. And then Django could be used, Nginx I think also, but Django could be used for the authentication side potentially, as well as your database. Yeah, it's not a trivial task, I'll say that much. How do you download a large CSV file in Django? Any idea? Yeah, so you'd probably need a streaming response, or what you could do is you could actually create the CSV file, store it in your static files, and then just like download it that way. So in other words, using Django and Celery to create, like Celery to actually create the large CSV, because it'll probably run for a while. And then once you create it, then you store that into a static file server, something like AWS S3, or Google Cloud Storage, or Linode storage, or Linode Object Storage, or DigitalOcean's storage. There's a lot of different places you can actually store that large file, and then just having Django sign that file and have it downloaded then. Hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm going to answer a few more of these that are like 30 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, and then I'm going to scroll back to newer ones. So I'll try and get more rapid fire ones going, because I'm probably not going to be able to hang much longer. And let's see here. Okay, so let's see. SaaS architecture and Django REST framework. Yeah, so there's nothing about SaaS and Django REST framework that have to be independent of each other. So I don't know exactly what you're asking there. So in other words, you can use Django REST framework with SaaS or not. So you don't actually need both. Any plan for a WhatsApp clone using channels? That's an interesting idea. Not yet, but if you go to cfe.sh/suggest, let's see here. Yes, if you go here, you can suggest it. And that's actually a great place for any of you to suggest things and upvote them. You will need an account on cfe.sh, but certainly a place you can do it. Cool. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Spring Boot versus Node.js. I do not know Spring Boot, so I can't comment there, but I'm pretty sure it's not a runtime like Node.js. So yeah. Dropbox and more companies. Spotify, Dropbox. Yeah, a lot of people use Django. It's definitely one of the most popular, if not the most popular, Python web application frameworks in the world. There are other ones that are incredibly popular too. So yeah, a lot of companies use them, even if it's not their primary web application, right? So even if Dropbox.com is not Django, but like they have internal stuff using Django, that's probably happens a lot too. Looks like you love Django. You do too. You have great tutorials here. Thank you very much. Next one is coming hopefully this month. It's going to be a really, really big one. I just need to finish. So I just moved here, so I need to finish off the studio so the sound is a little bit better. I'm actually curious what you guys think. Has the sound been good? And does it need to be a lot better? Do you hear any echo? If you turn it up loud, how does it sound to you? Let me know. And use Django and Flutter for front end. Flutter is easy to learn, just widgets. Cool. Yeah. There you go. Django backend right there. More Django REST framework. Okay. Noted. Thank you. Does Django being slow compared to Fast API have any negative impact when building projects? So the slowness of things is like something that the vast majority of projects will never, ever really experience. If you have bad queries, as in if you're doing bad lookups in the database, both Django and Fast API will suffer as a result, right? So the database, you're only going to be as fast with these queries as fast as the database is. So that adds to some of the slowness with either one. But like the complaints about Django being slow are, I don't think they're fair complaints, because like I said, Instagram uses Django and it still uses Django. They're not going to switch to Fast API for everything. Tweet Me Too was madness. Was it really? Like too hard or all over the place? Because it was a big one. It was like 12 and a half hours, right? Can you make a video on Django database locks in Django? I made an e-commerce website which updates users' carts based on product available with seller. Oh yeah, so like atomic transactions and stuff too. Thanks for the suggestion. Definitely check out that link I mentioned a little bit ago. Try Django series was amazing. Thank you. Yes, continue the series. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a new version soon. Absolutely. Minus, minus, plus, plus, plus. Not sure what you mean by that, Rayon. Thank you, though. Will there be Python 4 in the next 10 years? I'm not a core Python developer, but I think there's been rumors that Python 4 will be out, but there's going to be practically nothing really that different about it. But hopefully it'll be the end of Python 2 and the end of Python 3 at the same time. But Python has that problem of which version of Python should you be using. Hopefully Python 4 changes that problem. We'll see. So you haven't had good experience with PyWebView. Did you watch the one on my website? PyWebView was a little tricky, but once I got it working, I thought it was great. Electron is good, but it's ginormous. It's a really, really big application. It's the size of Google Chrome, really. So even for a minimal one, it's like 300 megabytes, I think. PyWebView is so much smaller than that. Thank you for your comment, Nisha, thank you. Appreciate it. How to start contributing to open source. Find any GitHub library that's active, as in you can see that they handle pull requests, and do some. Like, that's how you contribute. You can just, fork the code and do a pull request. There's all sorts of easy ways to contribute to open source. Another thing is even just documentation. Even if you just add some better documentation to some of these open source libraries, probably not Django, because Django is really, really well documented, and it has been for a while. I mean, you might be able to find something in Django, certainly, but some of the other smaller ones that need some contributions, that's a good way to do it. You're new to coding, you tried several frameworks. Python, based on Python, should I select Django? What do you think about it? I think Django is what really hooked me into programming. I did all sorts of other things, but once I did Python and Django together, it was like, oh yes, this is for me for sure. And now all of the other programming stuff, I can pick it up much, much faster. Hey, what's up from Brazil? Nice. Due to condition in my home is a good part of for the super chats. Hey, no worries, Priyansh. I totally get it. It's the pandemic has been hard on a lot of us. Hopefully things pick up for you soon, man. Fast API is gaining popularity. Do you think it'll overtake the Django REST framework? So Django REST framework is just like a package that's added to Django. So maybe it probably is already more popular than Django REST framework by itself, but Django and Django at large is probably still dominating far above Fast API, but they're very, very similar. So what's the big thing? Rewind it a bit. You'll see, I talked about Try Django 3.2. That's what's coming back. Fast API playlist. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Be sure to suggest that on my website. Hey, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Playlist, yeah, Fast API playlist. Cool. Can we make a backend in Django for a streaming website? Yes. Django has support for asynchronous functions now, so it has support for an asynchronous web server gateway interface as well, which is great. Fret framework and ERP next. I haven't seen either of those, so maybe something I need to check out. What do you guys think? How do you create file download links in Django? I certainly did this in my e-commerce course, and I think I might have even done it in the Django boot camp I did last year, which was like 10 videos long. It was all live. Trying to teach Django live is not for me. I prefer recording it, polishing things, taking breaks, all that. Doing it live, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that again. Not anytime soon, at least. I mean, maybe what I'd end up doing is actually have a live recording and then take questions like this in between publishing it, but I'm not sure yet. What's coming next? Try Django 3.2. Node versus Deno. That's a good question. I haven't played around with Deno enough to give you an answer there. I've heard some really good things about it, though. Yeah, anytime. RabbitMQ, PubSub, and Django described about it. Yeah. Oh, you want me to describe it? RabbitMQ and also Redis. So you can there's this thing called a message broker where you can send messages to it, and once they're ready to be consumed, they are sent back. That's kind of it's kind of like just a big queue of things that need to happen potentially, and that's what PubSub typically does. That's not a great answer, but that's I'm trying to get through some more. So hopefully, if you need some more clarification, let me know. Is it possible to use a normal database for basic user detail and sensitive information in the blockchain, like Python framework and the blockchain? Can you use these things in tandem? Yes. I haven't ever had to do it or even attempted to do it, but my understanding of how to use the blockchain to store things would be just another sort of insert into the big blockchain. They would just be two separate functions that actually work differently, right? One actually uses like a relational database and the other one uses a blockchain database, which you can do, at sorry, I got distracted by the next comment. You can do all sorts of databases with give any single Python function. So blockchain, thinking of it as in terms of another database. Yeah, you totally could. Why is it so dark at your place? Am I Batman? Yeah, so I hopefully my face is not dark, but the back is. If the whole thing is dark, then I definitely need to work on the lighting overall. But I only have one light up right now. Usually I've had, I think, 3 lights. So one big light here, and then my window is right there. That was meant to be some extra light, but perhaps it's a little too dark. You guys tell me. Let's see if this makes it any better. How's that? Is that a little better? I'm trying to dim the background more and just be focused up front. Yes. Thanks again, Shyam. Okay, let's see here. Aman, thank you. Appreciate it. Any plans to launch a new Django course? Yes. Try Django 3.2 is coming next. Can we have a tutorial for video app from Django? Do you mean streaming, or do you mean kind of like my website where you actually have a bunch of videos on there, but you're not doing the hosting of the streaming video yet? Yeah, Django, absolutely. Yes, video streaming service would be great. What is ASGI? That's asynchronous server gateway interface versus a synchronous one, which is WSGI. So ASGI is just asynchronous requests. So yeah, HTTP file response for downloading files. Yes, but I would say Django itself should probably be signing files or signing a URL so you can download the files from an actual static file host and not using Django to do it very often. So DSA for web jobs. What's DSA? I think I forgot that one. Any tutorial on Redux? Yeah, that's definitely on the to-do list as far as things that I need to do. Redux is pretty cool, especially newer versions of it make it a lot easier. Hello, Amit. How's it going? What special libraries will make Python code super fast? Async.io is amazing, and that's built into Python. So that is the asynchronous Python library that allows you to do concurrent programming, which is cool. Is it okay to suggest your mail ID? What do you mean? You love my videos. Thank you. Are you planning some sort of demo for asynchronous views or any sort of asynchronous function in Django's that are introduced to Django 3? Maybe. I might end up doing that. Maybe. I'll say maybe. The async views, for beginners, it adds complexity that isn't necessary at that time, right? So that's kind of the reason why I've kind of shied away from them for a lot of the beginner tutorials, is because it adds a level of complexity that the beginner programmer, if you're new to programming in general, I want the Try Django series to be as easy to comprehend as possible. Yeah. So can I tell us about social authentication flow with Django REST framework, what packages to use? Yeah, so using Django AllAuth inside of Django is probably the way I'd go about doing it. And then there is a Django AllAuth, Django REST framework package that combines all 3 of them. Hopefully that helps. If we want to make a shopping cart in iOS development, what are the basic requirements for backend like libraries and databases required? So a shopping cart, you could definitely use Django, and maybe the database being a Postgres SQL database. And then you'd probably have the Django Rust framework. That's probably the minimum that you need for the shopping cart. As far as checkout is concerned, you would need like something like Stripe or Braintree. There's several others too, but I would say those two are probably the easiest ones to implement. That's what I would recommend. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Yeah, NumPy. Yeah. So is it? Did you mean QP, QPy, CUPY, NumPy and GPU? That one's great for sure. That is a good way to boost your NumPy or data science related code for sure. Why is MERN so famous? That's a good question. So I think it's what? Node, React, Express, and Mongo. Is that the acronym again? I think because it's all JavaScript, maybe. I don't know. I don't know why it's famous. It's also an acronym. For whatever reason, people love acronyms. I mean, I use an acronym too, CFE, Coding for Entrepreneurs, right? Hey, what's up? I'm doing well. How are you? Yes, Docker and Kubernetes video. Absolutely. I have some Docker videos already. Kubernetes is another thing that I'll get into, but that's more like even more DevOps stuff. Docker itself is a tool that I've already covered. So serverless Django is one of those things that I've done. And I also did like basic Docker with Python on the channel, but I should probably do some more. You like this lighting better. Okay, cool. So you see, there's nothing on the wall, so I need to put stuff up. What do you guys suggest? Can I suggest a use case for Reactive X, RxPy, and Django Rust framework? I've not used that. I'm not sure what that is actually. Something like Zoom. Yes, that's not trivial. For sure not trivial to build something like Zoom. Thoughts on type hints using Django? I don't use them yet. I know that they're becoming more and more popular. I don't know if they're natively supported or will be in the near future or for a while. Type hints are, well, like I have a love-hate relationship with them because on one hand, I think they make better code, right? So you'll actually end up having better, more resilient code. But on the other hand, it just takes longer to actually use them. It's a lot faster to not have to use type hints, right? Or types at all. But it's probably better software at the end of the day, better, more resilient software, which is what we should all strive for. And I don't believe that Django is going to implement it as a requirement anytime soon because they like having support for previous versions of Django and not making radical changes to the core of Django. What should a mid-level Django developer freelancer charge per hour? Oh, that depends on so many different factors, so it's hard to say. It also depends on where you are in the world, right? So if you live in San Francisco, you might be charging $300 an hour, maybe even more than that. But if that's not a mid-level one. I don't know. I haven't thought much about it, but probably in the range of if you're in the East, then maybe like I'd say 15 an hour to 50 an hour as a mid-level. Anything above 50 an hour is probably not going to be considered a mid-level developer from the East. Maybe, but I haven't spent a lot of time trying to think about that specifically, and also what defines a mid-level developer. It's another good question. So is Django a good carrier as a full stack developer? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Django, like knowing just Django, is that enough? Probably not. Django with microservices. Oh yeah, data structures and algorithms. Duh. That acronym, I like never use that acronym. I always just data structures. I can't remember what your question was. And will I make tutorials on Raspberry Pi 4? Yes, absolutely. I have one actually. It's on my website called Pi Server, but perhaps I need to do more. PHP or Python, why, or Pyron. I don't think that's what you meant, but I like Python a lot. I think it has a lot more applications than just PHP. TensorFlow tutorial. Oh yeah. I have a Keras tutorial on my website. So I don't know if you want to do that one. Keras is an abstraction on top of TensorFlow. I have my e-commerce website. Nice. Why is the Django 3.2 plus admin site dark? Is it? I haven't seen that. Mine have all been light mode. Maybe there is a dark mode now, and I'm not aware of it. That's pretty cool. Make a complete video Django authentication. It contains. Yeah, I've done this quite a few times, including a custom user model. And I think the Django, what is it? The e-commerce course that I did all that. But I also I feel like I did it in Tweet Me too as well. But DJ REST auth. Yes, I think that's it for the Django REST framework. I think it is. Good call. Yes, thank you for the suggestion. Man, it's going to be a while before I do the Redux tutorial, but thanks for the suggestion. What kind of debugging do you use? Kind of only print statement or any tools? Typically, it's using logging. That's what I'll do more, but then also writing tests. Writing tests is like the number one debugging tool, to be honest. If you actually write tests, then you can find where a lot of the errors are happening in your code. So spending a lot of time writing tests. And Adam Johnson, I mentioned him before. If you just search Adam Johnson Django, he has a great book on writing tests. So I highly recommend checking that out. What are transactions in Django? Where does it make sense to use them? They're database transactions. So it's like, how does Django communicate with the database? So use them all the time if you're using the database. Can I do a tutorial based on debugging Django applications? Oh, that's an interesting one. This would probably be a great tutorial for Adam Johnson to write another blog post. Speaking of a guy, because I believe this is I believe he freelances a lot, and this is essentially what he does. Is he'll go into a company that, and I talked about this with him in our chat on the live stream, a few months ago. I think he goes into a company and writes some basic tests, and that's how he ends up debugging a lot of their issues. Can I do a video with a Twilio API? I have one, I believe. Sending SMS and stuff like that. Is that what you mean? What do I recommend? Or do I recommend React Query for authentication? I don't know. How much Python is enough for Django? Okay, so can you write functions? Yes or no? Can you write classes as well as methods in those classes? If you know that, obviously that would probably assume that you know variables and loops and lists. If you know all of those things, you probably know enough to handle the Python side of Django. If you want to really know Django, you need to learn HTML and CSS as well. But really, Django itself, at its core, is really just a bunch of functions and a bunch of classes, and that's it. I mean, one could argue every programming at its core is just a bunch of classes and functions. So that's probably not great advice. But what I just said about Python, knowing how to write classes and instance methods and instances, if you know how to do all of that stuff in Python, you're probably ready for Django. Even if you just know how to write functions and what executing a function does or how you call a function, you're probably good too. What is an SMTP server? So it's a type of server specifically for email, and it's a specific type of protocol as well, specifically for email. So it typically has a port assigned to it as well. And there's a lot more complicated things we can go into there. I think the Wikipedia article on it is fantastic. How to monitor user actions with log entry in Django Admin. That's a good question. I actually like monitoring their activity on the admin. It's not something I've never really had to do. So I don't actually try to use it. That's a good question. That might be an interesting one to explore a little bit, because it'd be a good idea to monitor what people are doing in the admin. to make sure if new people to the staff. I feel like Django would have really good documentation for that. Is Django fading since Mean and Mern Stack are taking over the market? No, I don't think so. But there is something to be said about using JavaScript for everything, right? Or JavaScript and TypeScript. TypeScript is still pretty much JavaScript, but yeah. I think if anything, what's happening is we're just getting an explosion in both things because software developers are definitely in demand. So any playlists for Python and AWS? What are you hoping to see? Let me know. I want to secure my Django REST framework auth in client. I was using HTTP only cookies, but the question is how to get the token from the client to pass in its authorization header. Yeah, I think the Django documentation has this, not Django REST framework, but the actual Django documentation. I think it's actually pretty good in there. Am I working as a freelancer? No, I do not freelance. I pretty much just make content and learn about new things. That's that's my thing. Yeah. Thoughts on storing tokens in HTTP only cookie. HTTP only is great for authentication. Absolutely. I do recommend doing it. And I believe even the Django core developers recommend doing it as well. If I remember correctly. Yeah. DSA, mostly famous in India. Yeah. I mean, it's like a common thing to say data structures and algorithms for sure, but I always forget the acronyms because I don't use them all the time. Give you a view on Raspberry Pi Pico. You want a Raspberry Pico tutorial? Interesting. Best way for freelancers to freelance for beginners. I mentioned this a while ago, so just rewind it in the stream here. Hey, thank you. I'll keep posting for sure. Admin site theme is based on your default Windows theme mode. Oh, that's a new thing then. That's cool. Django e-commerce helped you a lot. Great. I'm glad it did. Just started learning OpenCV and your videos are really helpful. Thank you. I'm learning YOLO and OpenCV. We make a tutorial on YOLO. Yeah, that definitely sounds interesting for sure. Be sure to add it to the suggestions. I need to get back and doing more OpenCV stuff for sure. Do more Q&As, definitely. I haven't tested Copilot much. Where have I been for so long? I mentioned this earlier, but I've been making a bunch of stuff for codingforentrepreneurs.com. So my website, or cfe.sh, my website right here. So that's where I've been. I've been doing a bunch of stuff for that. And then I moved. So that really put me out for a couple of weeks or longer. And I'm getting back into the swing of things. And the next big thing is coming on YouTube, among anything. How to write tests in the Django REST framework. Definitely have covered this quite a few times. And I'm trying to remember the last place I did. But writing a test in Django REST framework is not really that much different from writing tests in Django. You just need to use some of the Django REST framework specific classes and features to actually write tests for the Django REST framework. Do I write code in TDD? So I know this acronym, test-driven development. So typically not. Now, this is probably, it's a little controversial maybe. To me, I'd rather build out what I'm trying to build and then test for the results I want. Other people do the exact opposite of that. TDD is the exact opposite of that. You test for the results you want and then start building the features to hit those tests. But my concern with TDD in particular for myself is, am I building, am I actually trying to build out the function or feature that I'm trying to build, or am I trying to build it to pass the test, right? So people who like testing first, or the TDD mindset, is build out the test and spend a lot of time on that, and then build the actual features itself. I don't know if that helps. Hey, good day from Philippines. Hey, what's up? Why do we use signals in Django? What are their benefits? Yeah, so signals are really good for communicating with other parts of your code based off of like a specific database transaction happening. I made a whole video on this, so you could definitely check that out. But it's a really good way to be like, oh, this model or this kind of data was saved from this model. this other one wants to know about it. And so you can actually make some changes with that, and it's incredibly observable. So observability is the key here. So if, for example, you have a user being created, and when they're created, several other things you want to have happen, like you send them a welcome email, you create their profile model, and perhaps you also search for them on, I don't know, Twitter or something like that, and you want to follow them on Twitter too. All of those things can happen automatically. This is actually a good use case for Signals, because if you ever want to turn any of those things off or change the model that actually executes it, Signals can do that like this. If you override the save method, which is a common way to not use Signals, you won't necessarily have that same observability. Of course, there's a lot of ways to make the observability happen without Signals, but yeah, they exist for a reason. Databases also have these signals as well. That's actually how they work with Django, as far as I remember. What backend frameworks do you use? Pretty much anyone that will get the job done in terms of Python or JavaScript. That's really it. Yeah. So I just did a whole series on Docker and Docker Compose, and I show you how to use all these different frameworks to run on Nginx, so they all work together. That's all on my website too. I think that's really worth learning. Any plans to do tutorial on tests in Django REST Framework? Sounds like we want Django REST Framework. You guys are obsessed, huh? Or at least today you are. How to work with Google Maps in Django, meaning outside API use in Django. Yeah, so rendering data that's stored in Django on a Google map. That's something that I probably need to do again. I definitely have done that. It's called Geolocator 2 on my website. It's a little bit older of Django code, but I think a lot of the concepts still work today. Best to use for Messenger, you mean chatbot? So Django Channels 2, I have a whole series on it right here on YouTube that you can watch for Django Channels 2 to build real-time chat. You're planning to shift from Django to, you're planning to shift to Django from PHP. Nice. Django's awesome. If you know PHP well, the Django templating engine might seem fairly intuitive to you, but certainly all the programming concepts should relate as well. So why aren't you getting the exact API from the metadata? It really depends on where you're hosting it and how you're hosting it, on whether or not you're going to be getting the IP. Usually. Is it good to store information in the session? Non-sensitive information, yes, that's actually okay. And it depends on whether or not you actually want to store it in the session, because once the session ends, then you won't have access to that data, right? So for example, if you want to store a shopping cart in the session, like the ID to a shopping cart, not the actual entire cart, but just a small piece of information, that's a good thing to do. I do that. Absolutely. Or if you want to store whether or not they're a brand new user in the session, is this their first time here? Literally their first time here. That is another thing that you could store in the session. They could use in other views and generate things accordingly. Okay, so I'm going to be wrapping up here in just a few minutes. I intended only to do an hour. It's been a little bit over an hour, not just on this one, but also I did a live stream before that got interrupted. But yeah, so I'll answer a few more questions and try to rapid fire them. Man, I need a more comfortable chair. I got a new one, and this one is certainly not as comfortable as my other chair doing these longer live streams. Not that you guys care or anything. So yeah, because really, I know I'm reading questions and answering to you, but I'm literally hanging out by myself, right? So I'm just talking to the camera and answering questions. It's not exactly a normal conversation, right? And that's how my job is, but that's how it goes. Anyways, best way to get a job, dev job transitioning from a data analyst. Yeah, so portfolio, build a portfolio of the projects you've built. I would start there. Just build a bunch of different projects, even if they're really small and only solve a need that you have. That'd be good. So a good example of this that I would attempt to do is how, if you're thinking about, let's say, buying a house or if you're thinking about buying a camera or a phone or something like that, actually build a tool that will monitor the price changes over time. So I don't know. You just build a bunch of stuff. That's it. Let's see here. What would you recommend for someone who wants to create websites showing beaches on a particular country from scratch? No code experience, had the data, but I don't know how to build it. I'm not sure what you mean. So showing beaches, like how do you show the beaches? I don't know how to do that without having cameras or APIs that do it. Or if you're talking about a map. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to do. Sorry. How to write clean and secure code in Django, some tips on it. So it starts with actually probably writing tests. So that will actually help you clean up your code quite a bit. And then using the Django debug toolbar will help you understand how long certain things are taking or certain queries are taking on any given view pretty much any given view. You can see how long the queries are taking. And using query sets, using prefetch related. So really understanding how Django models and queries work and model managers work, that will help you write more efficient code. As far as clean, refactoring code is something that you're going to want to do over and over and over again. As far as secure code, I think the obvious things are there, like don't expose user information when you shouldn't, right? Like you shouldn't put a user email in the session or in cookies, for example. But you should also be continuously changing your secret key and obviously not exposing those sorts of things. So using environment variables for all of your secrets and things that should be secure. So security with code is not a trivial thing. It's like a constant thing that you'll have to learn and get better at. But those are some of the basics, I think. Can you just separate just the Django RM and use it in FastAPI? No, probably not. I mean, maybe there's probably a way to hack it together, but SQL Alchemy is very similar to the Django ORM. I think is actually modeled after the Django ORM. So check that out. Python SQL Alchemy. It's pretty good. And I have a Flask landing series somewhere. I think it's on YouTube, but it's definitely on my website that shows you how to use SQL Alchemy as well. And I think even 30 Days of Python has something for SQL Alchemy too. Django templates or React.js for front end. Django templates with HTMX might be the future of how I build projects. I'm not positive yet. You can build things so much faster. And when I say build projects, I mean at least version 1, right? Version 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe version 10 is when I bring in React.js. I still really, really like React.js. So it's hard to say, it's hard to give you a proper answer at this point. Because HTMX just really rapidly increases what Django templates can do and what they already do really, really well, which is rendering out HTML. So yeah, how do you choose a framework? Choose one and go for it, man. Is it hard? If it's hard, then stop doing it. I should vlog. Also on Instagram, you should post. We would love to see you there. Also, my suggestion. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I guess like a lot of the social media stuff, like Instagram, Twitter, I just don't use that much. And I think it's mainly because I don't have a habit of doing it. I did think about doing vlogs before, when Casey Neistat was blowing up. I'm like, oh man, it'd be so cool to do vlogs and essentially copy Casey's style. But that I'm not really like him, right? This is more my style, I guess, like just sitting down and chatting with you guys on a camera. But it's something to think about. Maybe if more of you want to see me vlog, then I'll start doing some of them. Mitch Tevian or Coding with Mitch, he has some funny vlogs where it's really just him breaking something down for like 10 or 15 minutes, which is probably closer to something I would do than like, oh, I'm going to fly to New York and ride around on a boosted board and it'd be all cool, because that does sound like fun, but holding a camera while doing it does not. What advice can you give on networking with people, building relationships? So how do you meet people, essentially? I think Dennis would be a good guy to talk to about this because that's what he did. He fell on my radar because he was just like pretty persistent on connecting with me, not in a annoying way. Right. So when you really need to connect with someone, that's usually when you don't connect with them, like when you're needy. And honestly, there's a book that I think is really good about this. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F or Giving a Fuck. That book is great in the sense that it helps you understand value systems and also neediness and sorts of things with relationships, because networking, it's not exactly dating, but it's kind of like dating in the sense that you just have to like be willing to put yourself out there, but also not be super needy when you do. Asking a lot of questions is a good way to do that, right? So, Farooq, if you were here asking questions to me constantly, eventually I'd probably know who you are, and perhaps we'd connect further. I don't know if that will happen that often, but like Priyansh, who was on earlier, like I definitely recognize him, and I haven't been on doing these live streams in a while. But you can do that with anybody, right? You can email people and just ask them questions. A lot of people really, really love giving advice. So yeah, I think asking people advice in their domain is a good idea. Networking is not something I spend a lot of time doing. At this point, if I were going to try to network with other people, it would most likely be entrepreneurs looking for some sort of technical co-founder, to where I wouldn't necessarily want to do the work of a co-founder, but actually advise them on what they could do. I think that in order for me to do something like that, I would go on like angel.co, look for a bunch of people that are hiring specifically programmers, and hit them up and be like, hey, like I'd love to give you guys chat with you guys, see what you're building, and see if I can help in any way, including helping them find other developers like you guys out here. That's my approach. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and there's only a few more. So let's stop asking questions so I can get through these. We'll see. What are some good projects to build with Django? I built blogs, social media, build a IoT backend that will collect data from like a Raspberry Pi and sensors or an Arduino and stuff like that. That would be a good project to build. Build a project that hosts a machine learning algorithm of some kind, and or does some sort of data pipeline where you're like mining data and cleaning it up and doing all that. Those are cool, other good ones as well. Yes. So what should I consider while preparing for an experienced Django interview? Are you already experienced with Django? If you're not, then get more experience with Django, and then you'll have a better sense of that. I should make interview prep videos. That's interesting. You work as a Django junior developer, or it's just a junior developer, and debugging is the biggest hurdle. Makes me slow on all my tickets, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, this is what comes with time. Like you just have to work through them. I think building a lot of your own projects will help this as well, like full stack projects on your off time. Anytime. Kiwi, yep. Definitely seen Kiwi. I mentioned this before. I haven't seen like a really popular Kiwi app, right? Like Electron, a good example of that is Slack. Slack uses Electron, right? There's nothing like that for Kiwi as far as I know. Pandas, I really like Pandas. And there's another one for Pandas that's shoot, I'm trying to remember what it's called. That speeds up Pandas quite a bit. But I like Pandas. I prefer using Pandas myself. What are your thoughts on Django and GraphQL using Graphene? I think it's great if you want to use GraphQL as a protocol for your backend lookups. Is writing custom backend for every project okay, or using CMS also good, if possible? So for React, yeah. So if you can use somebody else's API and you're just doing React, that's probably a really, really good idea. So like WordPress definitely has an API, so you could totally use WordPress as the backend and build a full-on React front end. It's a really smart thing to do if you're building a lot of freelance stuff. Now, Django, of course, can do all of this. So to get even more value as a freelancer, you can build your own backend using Django, which doesn't have to be that complicated. honestly. But then you have a lot more tie-in to the client, right? They're going to need to rehire you more and more to do the backend. But a lot of clients probably need WordPress backends because there's a really good CMS there, or even like Shopify backends, and then you can just build React on the front end. So hopefully that helps. You're developing an online exam website where people can create take exam, and I'm proctoring them. I want to, yeah, cool. Sounds good. You could use OpenCV to do this. Multiple viewers. Oh yeah. So you want video in these online exams. That is, you probably want to look at a more robust video tool. Like I think Nginx has one, FFmpeg. OpenCV probably isn't the best for this unless you need computer vision type things, which I don't know if you would need that, at least in real time. So with FFmpeg, if you're streaming with FFmpeg, you can take frames from that and send them to OpenCV to verify any data that's in there where it's not actually affecting the stream at all. Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good day. See you later. Thank you. Thanks for watching. You learned Django from my videos. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Howdy. Can you comment on the pros and cons of the same origin calls, Django backend versus API calls versus with core dependencies? Or cores. So whenever you do cross-site requests, there's a lot of like red flags that are built into a lot of backends like Django. So if you're on the origin, those same cores problems don't necessarily happen. So security-wise, using same origin is usually a lot better and a lot less things that you need to consider. That being said, it's not always practical. So what you can often do is you can use like to really secure, or to secure it a little bit better, is you use another Django web application that uses read-only database, like an actual read-only database. It actually doesn't have to be another Django application, but let's just say it's another one for now. It's a read-only database, so it's only reading what it's trying to consume from the API for the vast majority of the API calls being read-only calls, and then the update calls would have to be like, transmitted over like over your network or something like that. Man, that could get so complex. So anyways, thanks for the question. It has been a long time. And here I am. How to use agile methods in Django. That's a long discussion that I don't have time for right now. You always support your two friends, Dennis Mitch. Love to see that support. Yeah, those are good guys. And they support me. We support each other. We try to all do that. There's certainly other developers that we support too. I think Dennis is like really good about that as far as like all these other developers, because he's like, I feel like Dennis wants to be like a really popular YouTuber, which more power to him. To me, I just want to master skills, and one of the best ways to do that is to teach it. I do like being a YouTuber, but I consider myself more of like a teacher than anything, which means I'm also a student. Anyways, Corey, what's up, man? You're getting worried about me. Don't get worried about me. I'm good. Just been making a lot of content on my website, and then I moved. So that's it. But thank you for the support. Appreciate it. Thanks, Veron. I'm glad you enjoy my content. Make more Django REST framework stuff. Yeah. Any message for grad students? Pick the brains of your professors. Get to know your professors. Make sure they know who you are. So when you graduate 10 years from now, they remember you. If you just show up, they remember you. This might be asking a lot of questions. It might be taking them out for coffee or a meal or a beer or something like that. Or if you watch Ted Lasso, he does this little like biscuits with the boss thing. You could totally do that too when they have office hours. Bring in biscuits and just be kind, fun, somebody who asks a lot of questions and is definitely going places. You know what I mean? How to find the right resources for some problems which you are stuck at. This is the question of questions, right? Like how to find the answers for problems you're stuck at. I think it's just asking a lot of questions and going to communities, not trying to demand a lot in terms of like, give me, right? If you're super needy, nobody wants to help you. But if you're asking a lot of really hard questions, that other people like answering hard questions. So Stack Overflow, Quora, those are other places that you can pose really hard questions. Now, if they're questions that are just hard for you, other people have solved them, then it's a matter of putting in the work, reading a bunch, reading other questions, trying to be thoughtful about questions you find on Stack Overflow, and seeing if you can even answer those. You know what I mean? Please make a detailed tutorial upon Django channels, WebSockets, and signals. Have one on Django channels. It's called Django Channels 2. It's already on the YouTube channel, and it uses WebSockets. And I think I did another one on WebSockets that doesn't use channels at all. Django Signals is also its own video, and I use it a lot too. I'm watching a tutorial on Django REST Framework, but don't send at all any content on tips. You need to understand Django before understanding the Django REST Framework. That's at least my philosophy here. You've seen me live. How am I? I'm great. How are you? Thanks for the question. Make a playlist for Django REST Framework and React. Thank you. You love my content. You learn a lot. Great. Thank you. Hey, you guys actually stopped answering or asking questions, and I actually sort of caught up to it. I don't think the live stream ended, but it sounds like you guys either listened or just questions have stopped. Anyways, hey guys, thanks so much for watching and asking all these questions. I had a good time. It's been a while, but yeah, try Django 3.2 is the next thing coming out. It's going to be right here on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe and look forward to seeing you guys next time. There are 2 more questions that just came in. I'll answer them real fast. What piece of advice would you give to someone getting started at Django? Build as many projects as you can. Try Django is a good way to go. Those are my series, but there's a lot of Django projects out there that you can build. Can you do a UI mockup and database design while creating Django projects? Can I, or is it just generally? Yeah, you absolutely can. I don't think you need to spend much time on the database design because Django does a lot of the work for you. I mean, you certainly can, but yeah. Django REST React integration tutorial would be great. Check out Tweet Me Too. I definitely have all of that in Tweet Me Too. It's one of my most recent big projects that was here on YouTube. Anyways, thanks again, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you didn't know, my name is Justin Mitchell. I absolutely love doing this stuff in the sense of building content, answering you guys' questions. It helps me become a better teacher because you guys bring up stuff that I forget, or really you challenge what I should know because you guys are out there making things happen. So thanks again for watching. Look forward to seeing you guys next time. Peace.